What's going on, everyone? Badger here. One of the worst double standards that you see, especially when you're on YouTube or you're in any sort of media, really, and you're covering movies and television shows and things like that, is oftentimes we, and I'm going to use the royal we here, we will give criticisms. We'll say everything that we don't like about something only to get the pushback of, nah, you're just racist and sexist and homophobic, and you don't like this and you don't like that, and you're bigots and blah, 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 blah. Only for those products that we were originally talking about to fail horribly across the board. They don't sell merchandise, they don't make ratings, they don't make revenue, they alienate the audience, and then they end up saying what we're saying, but when they say it, it's all right. And nowhere is that more evident than in this Deadline article. Why Disney ditched Doctor Who. Sources say ratings, big ticket budget, and MAGA politics were factors in BBC deal failing to regenerate. And even saying MAGA politics, because what that really boils down to is it was too woke for the majority of Americans. That ain't got nothing to do with MAGA politics. That just has to do with the cultural zeitgeist of we're over it. We're over it. Tired of being preached to. So you can see here, they go through a bevy of them, but I've highlighted some of the more pertinent ones. It wasn't for the long term. This was not built to last. Russell T. Davies, by his own admission, said, if you aren't writing about LGBTQ in 2025, what are you even doing? So instead of telling good Doctor Who stories and making people, and then maybe putting in some allegory and making people think, it is just on the nose, heavy hitting propaganda. White straight males, bad. It was pretty apparent from early on that this wasn't for the long term, says a former Disney executive. Everyone got the impression that it wasn't doing what it needed to do on Disney Plus to be sustained. Another person close to Doctor Who adds, the writing has been on the wall for ages. There has been a complete lack of enthusiasm over at Disney or in the audience. And there's the reason why, because like everything else, they alienated. And this is not to, you can't say because it was cheap looking, because it might have been notorious, Doctor Who, at least on the BBC, for having some wonky CGI. The whole allure of bringing it into Disney was going to be the big budgets, which definitely ballooned as we're talking here, like 8.5 million per episode, which is a lot. You can see here, executives at BBC, which owns Doctor Who and oversees international sales, says it never felt like Disney were making much of a deal about the iconic sci-fi series, which has been on British screens for more than 60 years. Disney's source has countered this, with one telling the Times of London that a lot of marketing muscle was put behind the show. All evidence to the contrary beyond them calling it a season one and throwing it on Disney Plus and by all accounts trying to marvelize it, which did not work. So Doctor Who's performance has been far from stellar in the US. This year's season failed to register in Nielsen and Luminate's streaming charts. And oh my God, when I tell you how many, at least back in the day, they're not really around anymore, but the Disney Who fanboys, the activists, the same people that, like Acolyte and things like that, but like, oh, that's just the overnight numbers. And there's a streaming app and there's this and there's that. And at the end of the day, I was right. Deadline is saying it too. It didn't register with Nielsen and Luminate, which are two of the main ways now how we can tell what streaming has done, because we don't get accurate numbers from the actual streaming services. Meanwhile, the entertainment strategy guy blog branded Doctor Who debut on Disney as one of the flops of 2024. There was also a serious lack of awards, but it's because there was nothing to be awarded. On the BBC, it had seen an alarming drop-off in viewing figures. Season 15 averaged 3.8 million viewers, according to Gold Standard 28-day viewing figures from Barb, the UK's official ratings agency. This represents a decline of 1 million people on the prior season, the first starring Gatwa and produced by James Tranter's Bad Wolf. Both Gatwa seasons were down on Jodie Whittaker's concluding season, so it is impressive. Even Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen, even her ratings weren't as bad as this, and they just continued to get worse. Meanwhile, we had Gatwa, who left after 2 years. Gatwa's experience felt somewhat fraught. Left after 2 seasons and later blamed burnout, with the 33-year-old saying he was getting old and my body was tired. A Doctor Who source says the show suffered because Gatwa never fully embraced the role. There is more to that role than performing, this person says. You have got to be an ambassador for the brand and embrace being the generation's doctor. Matt Smith and David Tennant fully understood the responsibility it carried. I would also argue that Jodie Whittaker also just did more alienating than embracing of the show and the audience. So here they say it. Another well-placed industry source says Doctor Who became too woke for Trump's America. Trump's USA. Really, it's just too woke for anyone paying attention. And this was a factor in Disney's minds when it came to a renewal. Under writer Davies, and we talked about that, the series had cast transgender actress Yasmin Finney, featured drag queen Jinx Monsoon as the Maestro villain, and played host to a historic gay kiss between Gatwa and Jonathan Groff, some of which drew complaints from BBC viewers. So it turns out it wasn't just Trump's America. It was the BBC itself. Disney is incredibly unlikely to ever admit that politics were a factor in Doctor Who's cancellation, but Jimmy Kimmel's brief suspension was revealing of the company's desire to minimize MAGA wrath, even though they got more subscription cancels from their side than they did from us, who had already canceled because of Gina Carano. With Davies yet to commit to show running future seasons, which we'll talk about that in a second, should be the last thing they do. You need to get Davies as far away as possible from Who. With Davies yet to commit, it's possible that Doctor Who could have dialed down diversity under a Disney renewal, but the fact remains that celebrating difference has always been, but this wasn't celebrating difference. This was saying that their difference is greater than, because as a male presenting doctor, you just wouldn't have understood. And of course, they ended with the Billy Piper, Rose Tyler coming back. That revealed to be stunt casting. It was done at the last second and simply meant to create buzz, to be a big talking point. They're still suggesting everything could be reset. You can see here the former Disney executive reckons the BBC will be able to spend at most 2.5 to 3 million pounds per episode, which could work around at 1 million per episode from the BBC's own pocket, and any additional coming from BBC Studios distribution advance in what is a tricky market for drama funding. So basically, they would see their budgets slashed under BBC, and I would suggest it doesn't matter because the higher budget didn't help them at all if that's the type of stories you're going to be telling. Somehow they still think it's possible that it's another American company, and they foolishly cite the $1 billion Taylor Sheridan. My children, that is because it's Taylor Sheridan, and a Russell T Davies is no Taylor Sheridan. Clearly cannot sustain one series, let alone 5 or 6 of them like Sheridan is doing. So, and then last but not least, you can see here, Salt, the BBC drama boss, also gestured to the timeless quality of the show, reassuring fans that the TARDIS remains at the heart of the BBC. This ability to regenerate has always been central to Doctor Who lore, so who would bet against Disney simply being a fleeting passenger in the Time Lord's travels through space and time? Disney, BBC Studios, and BBC declined to comment, and no American business or studio is going to bail them out. It's done. Last we heard from insiders, because it's all just insider information, right? If you believe it, is that the actual crew, the actual cast and crew, people who build sets, who do all the things, production, they got told a decade until we're going to see this back on the air, and at least 5 years before they could get back to doing like soft production of things. So yeah, this needs to go away. People need to forget how horrible it was, and you come back being true to form and with maybe an actual charismatic male doctor, and change him being a little girl from Gallifrey, where the fuck it was. All right, let me know what you think about this. Not surprising. This is everything that we've said for years, and now that it's official, they're allowed to say it. Par for the course for most of these things. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this. Make sure to like, share, and sub. If you have done that, thank you. If you're going to do that, thank you. And
well, bye.